Out that your mom and brother were murdered?
My dad called me. I can't remember the exact time, but it was later. And he called me on the phone. He asked me if I was sitting down, and I was like, yeah. And then he, sounded odd, and then he told me that my mom and brother had been shot.
What'd you do?
Well, Brooklyn, my girlfriend, was with me, and I think she heard she could hear my conversation kind of over the phone. And so she just started packing stuff, and I kind of just sat there for a minute, and I was in shock. But eventually we got our stuff together and drove down to Moselle.
Did you see your dad?
Yes, sir.
What kind of condition was he in? What was his demeanor?
Yeah, his demeanor was, he was destroyed. He was heartbroken. I walked in the door and saw him and gave him a hug and just broken down.
What did you do to help him pack?
Got his bag and went into the closet, grabbed some t-shirts, grabbed some shorts, grabbed toilet kit, put it in the bag and left.
Why were you doing the packing?
Just trying to help him. He was so upset. We were all upset, but just trying to expedite the process of getting Alameda.
When did you first find out that your...
What if I told you that the most quietly devastating story to come out of one of the most talked about criminal cases in American history isn't about the man who was convicted? What if I told you that somewhere in the middle of all the headlines, the documentaries, the legal battles, and the courtroom tears, the most complex figure in this entire saga never fired a weapon, never sat at the defendant's table, and never once, not publicly, broke down? What if I told you that while the world was focused on the man behind bars, there was another man still standing on the outside, carrying a name that had become synonymous with scandal, grief, and unanswered questions? A man who sat in that courtroom every single day, watching testimony about how his mother and younger brother were taken from this earth, and showed almost no emotion. A man who received a phone call from his father on the night of the murders, while the bodies were still warm on the ground. A man who continued to speak to his father from behind prison walls, sometimes laughing, sometimes being directed, sometimes being told where to go and what to do, even as the rest of the world demanded justice. His name is Buster Murdaugh, and this is not the story you've already heard. Before we go any further, I need to stop right here and say something. If you have never visited this channel before, welcome. And if you have been here before, you already know that what we do at Dark Trail Files is different. We don't just recap cases. We don't just tell you what happened. We take you inside the psychology, the relationships, the moments that other people gloss over. We find a thread that nobody else is pulling. And today we are pulling a thread so deep and so revealing that by the time this video is over, I promise you, you will be questioning things you thought you already understood about this case. So if this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button right now. Turn on your notifications. Because the trail we walk on this channel doesn't always lead where you expect. And you do not want to miss what comes next. This is Dark Trail Files. Stay with us. To understand Buster Murdaugh, you have to first understand what it means to be born into the Murdaugh family of Hampton County, South Carolina. Because this wasn't just a family. This was a dynasty. For nearly a century, the Murdaugh name carried an authority in the South Carolina Lowcountry that very few names ever achieve in any community anywhere. Richard Alexander Murdaugh Sr., known as Randolph, was a prominent attorney. His father before him was a solicitor. His grandfather before that, also a solicitor. 3 generations of Murdaugh men who held legal power in the same small region of South Carolina. They were the kind of family who didn't just know the law, they were in many ways the law. And into that legacy, on September 15th, 1996, Richard Alexander Murdaugh Jr. was born. The world would come to know him simply as Buster. From the very beginning, Buster's life was shaped by 2 things: privilege and expectation. He grew up on Moselle, a nearly 1,700-acre hunting estate straddling the Salkehatchie River in Culleton County. He attended Wade Hampton High School, played sports, and by all outward appearances lived the kind of golden Southern upbringing that makes people comfortable. His father, Alex Murdaugh, was a powerful personal injury attorney at the Peters, Murdaugh, Elsroth, and Crawford law firm, one of the most dominant legal practices in that part of the state. His mother, Maggie Murdaugh, was by multiple accounts warm, devoted, and deeply involved in her sons' lives. And his younger brother, Paul, was the kind of loud, passionate, sports-loving kid who took up space in every room he entered. For years, from the outside looking in, the Murdaugh family looked like the picture of Southern success. But behind that picture, things were beginning to fracture in ways that almost no one outside the family could see. Alex Murdaugh had been secretly struggling with a serious opioid dependency for years, a dependency he managed to hide to an almost unbelievable degree, even from the people closest to him. And simultaneously, financial irregularities were slowly accumulating at his law firm. Millions of dollars being redirected, stolen from settlements meant for vulnerable clients. The man at the center of the Murdaugh empire was quietly building a house of cards. And Buster, the eldest son, the one being groomed to follow in the family's legal footsteps, was growing up inside that house. When Buster enrolled at the University of South Carolina School of Law, it seemed like the natural next step in the continuation of the Murdaugh legacy. But in 2019, that path was abruptly cut short. Buster was expelled from law school. The reason cited at the time involved academic dishonesty. Whether there was more beneath that surface or not, the expulsion was significant. It closed a door that his family had likely assumed would always be open to him. And it's worth pausing to note the timing. 2019, 2 years before the murders that would change everything. A family already under pressure that the world hadn't yet seen. June 7th, 2021, Moselle Estate, Colleton County, South Carolina. That is the date and place where everything the Murdaugh family had built, whatever remained of it, began to collapse into something irreversible. Maggie Murdaugh, 52 years old, and Paul Murdaugh, just 22 years old, were found shot and killed near the dog kennels on the family's property. The 911 call came from Alex Murdaugh at approximately 10:07 that night. He told dispatchers he had come home and discovered the bodies of his wife and son. What followed was the kind of media and law enforcement firestorm that small communities in South Carolina are not built to contain. The Murdaugh name, once a symbol of authority and standing, almost immediately became a symbol of something much darker. And where was Buster that night? He was not at Moselle. He was not at the scene. He was elsewhere when his phone rang and his father's voice came through the line. According to Buster's own testimony during the trial, his father asked him if he was sitting down before delivering the news. He said his father sounded odd. And then came the words that no child should ever have to hear from parent, that his mother and his brother had been shot. The moment Buster Murdaugh received the most devastating phone call of his life is something he described in detail on the stand. And the way he told it, calm, measured, almost clinical, struck many who were watching. Here is what he said under oath.
Out that your mom and brother were murdered.
My dad called me. I can't remember the exact time, but it was later. And he called me on the phone. He asked me if I was sitting down, and I was like, yeah. And then he, sounded odd, and then he told me that my mom and brother had been shot.
What'd you do?
Well, Brooklyn, my girlfriend, was with me, and I think she heard she could hear my conversation kind of over the phone. And so she just started packing stuff, and I kind of just sat there for a minute, and I was in shock. But eventually we got our stuff together and drove down to Moselle.
Did you see your dad?
Yes, sir.
What kind of condition was he in? What was his demeanor?
Yeah, his demeanor was, he was destroyed. He was heartbroken. I walked in the door and saw him and gave him a hug and just broke it down.
What did you do to help him pack?
Got his bag and went into the closet, grabbed some t-shirts, grabbed some shorts, grabbed toilet kit, put it in the bag and left.
Why were you doing the packing?
Just trying to help him. He was so upset. We were all upset, but just trying to expedite the process of getting Alameda.
When did you first find out that your
Buster drove to Moselle that night. He arrived around 2 in the morning. When he walked through the door, he found his father in a state he described as destroyed, heartbroken, just broken down, crying and barely able to speak. He hugged his father, and neither of them, according to Buster, ever spent another night at that property again. That detail alone, 2 men, father and son, walking away from 1,000 acres that had defined their family for generations, never to return together, tells you something about the magnitude of what that night represented. But here's where the story starts to complicate itself. Because while Buster was grieving the loss of his mother and brother, investigators were quietly beginning to focus their attention on the one person who had called in the discovery of the bodies, Alex Murdaugh. And as the weeks and months passed, what had initially seemed like a devastating family tragedy began to take on a shape that would ultimately lead to a criminal conviction and leave Buster Murdaugh in one of the most impossible positions any son has ever been asked to occupy. Here is something that most coverage of this case tend to skip over. While the world was watching courtrooms and press conferences and legal filings, while journalists were dissecting forensic timelines and ballistics reports, a phone line was open. Alex Murdaugh was behind bars, arrested in September 2021, initially for financial crimes, and ultimately facing 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of possession of a weapon during the commission of a violent crime. And in those early months of his incarceration, before the trial that would captivate the nation, Alex Murdaugh was on the phone with his son. Jail calls are recorded. That is a fact that every person entering a correctional facility is informed of. And yet, human beings, even intelligent, educated ones, even attorneys who have spent their careers in courtrooms, continue to speak on those lines in ways that reveal far more than they perhaps intended. The calls between Alex and Buster Murdaugh are a document of 2 men navigating an almost incomprehensible situation. And when you listen to them carefully, not just to what is said, but to the tone, the rhythm, the way certain things are addressed and other things are completely avoided, a portrait emerges that is both intimate and deeply unsettling. In one of the earliest recorded calls, we hear something that seems almost jarring given the gravity of the circumstances. A father and son on the phone, and the tone is not what you might expect from 2 people living through tragedy.
I need people to talk, but I'm way past worrying about what people that don't matter say. There's so many people that they don't have a freaking clue.
Well, it's easier for you. You don't run into these people in public.
Which people?
Any people that has a negative outlook on this thing.
Well, do you know who they are?
I mean, nah, man, but I get stopped and yelled at all the time. I got cussed out in the gas station the other day.
You kidding?
Nah.
For what?
Being who I am, I guess.
Who was it?
Yeah, and so I don't know who he is. Some redneck fella.
And what did he say?
He just started making a ruckus in the gas station, yelling at me, talking about WTOC's looking for me, and called me a piece of shit and just stuff like that. Just crazy stuff.
I'm sorry, as I can be.
Okay. Yeah, I don't really talk to him. I just kind of escape the situation.
WTOC. I mean, what the does he know about WTOC?
Man, apparently he said he saw something on the news where they said that people are looking for me, or someone's. I don't know what he said. I mean, it's not like I sat there and asked any questions. I mean, I understand that you've done illegal, but that doesn't mean you can just, turn a cold shoulder to the laws of the United States.
I've allegedly done illegal stuff. I'm kidding. Anyway, but it is what it is, you know? It is what it is.
What makes that moment worth examining is not just the laughter itself, it is the context. These were recorded calls from a man in jail, awaiting trial for crimes that included stealing millions of dollars from his own clients, some of them grieving families who had trusted him completely. And yet the tone in that exchange is almost casual, almost light. There is a psychological concept sometimes called emotional incongruence, the disconnect between the emotional weight of a situation and the emotional register a person uses to respond to it. When you witness it, it tends to stay with you, because either the situation is not as heavy to that person as it should be, or something else is being used to manage what would otherwise be unbearable. In the Murdaugh calls, both explanations seem worth holding on to. In another call, the subject shifts to something far more ordinary, the day-to-day rhythms of a man living behind bars and a son trying to maintain something resembling a normal life outside. But even in the ordinariness, there's an undertone that is worth noticing.
I don't know what's going on, but there's some big weekend where the Bloods and the Crips kill each other. So this is the first time I've been out of my thing in, I don't know, a while. It's been on lockdown all week. So I don't know when I'm going to get the call again. I just didn't want you to worry about me.
Okay. How do you know that this is a big weekend that gangs kill each other?
Because I asked a guy, I was like, you know, I mean, we've been on lockdown since, you know, only times I've been out of my cell were to go see Jim. The other day, and to go, I don't know, get some medical thing. And I was like, well, are we going to get out of our things today? And he's like, nah, this weekend is, and he called it something. And I'm like, what is that? And he said, that's a big, something with the blood. And, you know, they fight, I don't know, kill each other. I don't know. I ain't seen no blood where I'm at, but I guess it's uniform across the board.
Okay.
Anyway, that's what they told me.
The thing that becomes apparent when you spend time with these recordings is this. The conversations between Alec and Buster Murdaugh very rarely go to the places you might expect. The grief, the unanswered questions, the enormous emotional weight of what this family has endured. Instead, there's a kind of choreography to how they talk. Certain rooms are entered. Certain rooms are bypassed completely. And that choreography, whether conscious or not, tells a story of its own. There is a pattern in the Murdaugh jail calls that becomes more visible the more you listen. When ordinary topics arise, sports, finances, daily life, the weather in some sense, the conversations flow naturally. There is ease. There is rhythm. There is the kind of comfortable shorthand that only exists between people who have known each other deeply for a long time. But when the conversation edges toward anything touching the criminal case, toward Maggie and Paul, toward what happened at Moselle, toward the weight of public perception, something shifts. The words become more careful. The pauses become more deliberate. And a kind of verbal stepping around occurs that, in its own way, says more than any direct conversation might. Finances became a central and recurring theme in the calls between father and son. With millions of dollars allegedly misappropriated and legal fees mounting on every front, money was a constant pressure. And Alex Murdaugh did not hesitate to address it directly.
How you doing on finances?
Pretty slim, but it'll be getting better.
Well, listen here. Do you want me to tell Uncle John to give you, you know, several $1,000s, and then I'll pay it back?
No, it's just I've just had expenses, like considering I had to change my medical insurance.
Well, we need to get John to pay for the storage facility and then let me pay him back.
Well, I don't understand how you would.
You need to be paying. But anyway, I mean, do you want me to get him to give you just, I don't know, $4,000 or $5,000 so you just have, and you don't have to worry about expenses?
No, because I've got that money. I've got, I mean, right now my bank account, I've got $10,000. A little bit more when I get.
Sure, like when you go play golf, you can, if you want to, get a shirt and have a drink and have drinks or whatever at the bar and this, that, and the other.
Yeah, I mean, I've got stuff they can settle all that.
All right. Well, you just got to keep me posted because, I can get him to give you money and then pay him back. Okay. Well, you got to keep me posted and let me know, okay?
All right.
Everything else going okay?
Yeah, everything's fine.
You want to take my clubs?
No, I just use mine. I don't know where yours are. I think yours are still in the Mercedes. It's a Sword.
What emerges from conversations like this one is a portrait of a man who, even from behind bars, was still trying to manage the shape of things. Still trying to exercise some degree of oversight over a life that was rapidly being dismantled from the outside. The financial conversations are revealing not just for their content, but for their tone. There is a directness in Alex's voice when money is on the table that feels incongruous with the environment in which he is speaking. A man who stole millions of dollars from clients, a fact he would eventually plead guilty to. Discussing finances with his son as though this is simply another business matter to be organized and understood. And then there is this. At one point, Alex Murdaugh did not simply talk about the past. He reached toward the future. He suggested to Buster that he go hunting again. At Moselle, the very property where Maggie and Paul Murdaugh lost their lives. What happens next in these calls is perhaps one of the most discussed and dissected moments in the entire recorded history of this case. A father, from behind bars, makes a request of his son that many people who heard it found deeply difficult to process.
Can you hear me?
Hello? Yeah.
What you doing?
Nothing. At Greenfield.
Y'all hunting?
We're going to this afternoon.
Let me tell you what you ought to do, Buster. I think the damn heaters were full over there at Moselle. If you felt like going back there, I bet with nothing going on, I bet there's deer all over them things.
Not me back. What's that going to do for me?
Kill a deer?
I'm not going hunting out there.
I don't blame you. I'm just letting you know. Do you care if I let Jim do it?
Jim who?
Jim Griffin.
Oh, I let him hunt deer out there? What are you talking about?
I didn't know if you wanted to hunt doves out there. If you do, then I want you to do it. If not, then I'm going to let him do it. Do you want a dove hunt out there?
No.
Not at all.
The request was made only a few months after the murders. The suggestion that Buster return to Moselle, to the grounds where his mother and younger brother had been found shot to death, and go hunting there, as though the land could be reclaimed through routine, as though activity could overwrite horror. Whether this was Alex Murdaugh's way of coping, a strategic move to normalize the property in advance of the investigation, or something else entirely, it is impossible to say with certainty. What can be said is that Buster's response, or lack thereof, is itself part of the conversation. Because in these calls, Buster very rarely pushes back. Very rarely says, that is not something I want to do, or I need time, or I'm not ready for that. He moves through his father's requests with a kind of quiet compliance that raises its own questions. Is that loyalty? Is it grief? Is it the deep conditioning of a son who grew up in the shadow of a powerful, dominating father? Is it something else? You will have to sit with that question, because the answer is not simple. Here is something that becomes undeniable when you listen to the Murdaugh jail calls as a whole. Alex Murdaugh, even from prison phone, was not a passive participant in the narrative surrounding his case. He was actively engaged in trying to understand, shape, and direct how the Murdaugh story was being told to the public. And one of the primary ways he did that was through his son. Alex Murdaugh was acutely aware of how the media was covering his family. And in these calls, he made it clear that he expected Buster to be his eyes and ears in that regard.
PD Friday bus, I saw John Marvin on there for just a second.
Dad, it was something ABC 2020. I didn't watch it.
Well, was it a new interview or was it from that old interview?
I would assume if it had him on TV, it had to be the old one. He has not gone on TV since.
He hasn't. 10-4. All right. Well, I mean, was it the same old stuff with a bunch of innuendo and false stuff, or were they being semi-truthful?
Dad, I'd love to be able to give you some insight, but I didn't watch it and I didn't seek out anything, any transcripts from it. I don't know. I know.
It ain't no big deal.
I would assume it's the same old thing. Brooklyn told me some stuff that was on it, and it was stuff that's wrong. So I mean, it's just that same old.
Stephen Smith and Gloria and all that bullshit.
You know, I think it probably had to touch on that. I think this one hit maybe a little bit more on the boat wreck.
I gotcha.
I just know that there was some stuff that Brooklyn said that was said in the little show, and it's just stuff that's not important, but it just shows that if they are willing to state that in fact, that they just don't know what they're saying, because it's just stuff that's not true.
I understand. So are they still trying to say out there like there's some mystery surrounding Gloria's death about how she died?
Saying what now?
About how she died? Are they still trying to make some innuendo there?
About Gloria?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Are they still saying anything about Stephen Smith, even though Andy Savage?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think
there's
anybody.
No connection to her?
Yeah, I don't think anybody took the heart of
Did Smith ever
Andy
come out and
Savage.
say there's no connection?
No, they
Even though
would
he
never.
told Andy Savage that?
No, SLED has not released anything. They didn't even release a statement about what was this most recent thing. There was something came out not long ago talking about how there's been like a breakthrough in evidence to do with like the homicides, and SLED wouldn't even come out and issue a statement saying that there has been no further evidence like gathered.
10-4.
So personally, I would not count on SLED to help in any way.
I was just curious. All right, my man. You get some rest, and what time you get on the road tomorrow?
About 8 a.m.
All right, I'll give you a call sometime when I can. Buster, what's going on with COVID out there? It must be going crazy.
It's this new variant. It's
Omni COVID or whatever.
Omicron. It's
Omicron. That's it.
The urgency in those conversations around media coverage is palpable. A man who spent decades building a reputation as a lawyer, as a community figure, as a Murdaugh, watching that reputation be dismantled in real time through news coverage, documentaries, social media threads, and public discourse, and reaching out through a monitored phone line to his son to get a read on how bad it was, how he was being portrayed, what the story was becoming. There's something almost poignant about it, and simultaneously troubling, because the concern does not appear to be for the victims. It appears to be for the image. And then this happened. Christmas. While Alex Murdaugh was behind bars, he reached out to Buster with a directive about the personal belongings of Maggie and Paul. This next call is one that many who heard it found difficult to sit with, because what Alex Murdaugh asks, and it touches on something that goes well beyond the practical or the logistical.
Nights are better.
Yeah, having a good day. I've been spending so much money in it, and it hurts me.
On what?
People's Christmas presents.
Well,
I mean, I got to buy a present for everybody,
well,
and it's a lot of people.
I'll tell you this, Bus.
What?
Hang on. We give people something that was Mom or Paul's, and I think people really like that.
Well, I mean, I wasn't going to do that.
We'll see if I get out of here, which, like I say, I'm not optimistic, but we'll see. We'll see. They seem to be optimistic, but they were optimistic the first time too.
Right.
Anyway.
Well, I mean, I've already bought everybody something, so.
Well, We'll talk about finances when I get out of here, but I'm gonna make sure you're okay.
Well, I mean, I make money,
I know.
and if I don't go back in the spring, then I'll continue to make more effectively.
I know. Talking about anyway. We'll get all that square. Talk to you when we're not on this phone being recorded.
Maggie and Paul Murdaugh had been dead only months. Their belongings, the physical remnants of their lives, were still present in the world. And Alex Murdaugh, from his jail cell, suggested that those belongings be distributed as Christmas gifts. The emotional architecture of that request deserves to be examined. What does it mean to redirect the belongings of two people who were violently taken as gifts during a holiday season only months after their deaths? What does it mean that this directive came from the person who had been charged with their murders? And what does it mean that Buster, the son of one of them, the brother of the other, was the one being asked to carry it out? Whatever it means to you, it is worth noting that this is one of the moments in the jail call recordings that human beings who have listened to them consistently identify as one of the most disquieting. Not because of anything said in a harsh or explicit way, but because of what the request itself reveals about the emotional reality, or lack thereof, operating behind it. On February 21st, 2023, after nearly 5 weeks of testimony in the double murder trial of Richard Alexander Murdaugh, held at the Colleton County Courthouse in Walterboro, South Carolina, the defense called its third witness. Buster Murdaugh took the stand. He was 26 years old. He had been sitting in the courtroom gallery every single day of the trial, a fact that observers consistently noted. He had watched witness after witness take the stand. He had listened to testimony about the physical condition of his mother's and brother's bodies. He had sat through forensic analysis, ballistics reports, cellular data timelines, and reenactments of the events of June 7th, 2021. And through nearly all of it, he had displayed what multiple reporters who were present described as very little visible emotion. When Buster Murdaugh finally took the stand, the courtroom fell to a particular kind of quiet. The defense needed him to do two things: humanize his father and create doubt about certain key pieces of evidence. What he delivered was something more complicated than either.
Richard Alexander Murdaugh Jr., Murdaugh. I go by Buster.
Mr. Murdaugh, is your father sitting over here at defense table?
Yes, sir.
Tell the jury a little bit about yourself. Where you born, where you raised, where'd you go to school?
Right. So my name is Buster, 26 years old. I live in Hilton Head Island, South Carolina. I was born in Savannah and lived in Beaufort for about 2 years when I was a little child. We moved to Hampton in about 2000, and I grew up in Hampton, went to Wade Hampton High School, and after high school I went to a small college in Spartanburg called Wofford.
Is your mother Maggie?
Yes, sir.
And your brother Paul?
Yes, sir.
When you moved to Hampton, do you remember how old you were when you first moved to Hampton?
Three or four.
Okay. And did you live in Hampton in a house in the city limits?
Yes, sir.
The town limits?
Yes, sir.
And you did that with your mom and dad and brother for how long?
For around 20 years.
Right. What schools did you go to coming up through in Hampton County? What did you go to grade school?
Went to Ben Hazel Primary School, Hampton Elementary School, North District Middle School, Wade Hampton High School.
Okay. And as you were growing up, what were your interests, Buster?
Sports, playing sports, doing things outdoors, hunting, fishing.
And was your father involved in those interests with you?
Yes, sir.
And was your mother also?
Yes, sir.
And in what way?
Well, my father coached every little league team I played on up until I started playing for the schools in which had a coach.
And what about Paul? What were his interests growing up?
Paul's interests were outdoors, mostly. Hunting, fishing, playing around in the woods.
Right. Did he also play sports at times?
He did. Yeah, he played basketball and baseball.
Did your dad coach him as well?
He did.
And would your parents attend all of your and Paul's sporting events as you're growing up?
Every game. And it was a rarity for them to miss one, and then if they had to, they would call and explain. And
right. And at some point in time, did your parents buy this property off Moselle Road?
yes, sir.
Do you remember roughly when that was?
Right around 2012, I think. I would have been a sophomore in high school.
And when that property was first purchased, did you move out to Moselle, or are you still living in Hampton?
So we had a house in Hampton and also purchased the property at Moselle, which had a house. And for the beginning stages of owning Moselle, Hampton was still working as our primary residence. But I believe it was Hurricane Matthew, or one of the hurricanes came through and blew a bunch of pine trees over on the house. So it had to get work done to it. And from that point, we moved out from Hampton to Moselle while the house was getting fixed. And more or less, it just kind of, it never transitioned back to Hampton. It just almost like Moselle became the primary residence.
And during this time, did your family also have a house at Eddystone?
Yes, sir.
How frequently would you stay at the house at Eddystone?
Very frequently during the summertime.
Okay.
Almost every weekend.
And when your family essentially relocated to the Moselle property and making it primary residence, were you still living at home in high school, or do you remember how old you were at that point in time?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Jim. Will you say that again?
Were you living at home at that point in time? Was that while you were still in high school, or
Yes.
school? Do you remember when you transitioned to Moselle and started staying there basically full time during the school year?
So when I was still in high school, we were living in the Hampton house, and then I'd gone off to college.
Okay.
Which is when the stuff happened, and they moved out to Moselle. So yeah, I was living at college.
And when did you go off to college?
2014.
Okay, so sometime after around 2014, family relocated to Moselle for the most part
That's right.
because of the hurricane damage. Is
Yes,
that-
sir.
Okay. Tell the jury a little bit about the Moselle property. I know they've heard a fair amount, but I think you probably know it better than anybody.
Yeah, so the Moselle property it's roughly 1,700 acres, and a lot of that is really not even accessible. It's a lot of swamplands, a lot of stuff that you just, no road systems or anything like that, but a big portion of it is has road systems and everything, and it's a big property. It's broken up into several different parcels that border each other, and we have 20 some odd deer stands, dove fields, duck ponds, just all over the property. So
What type of hunting did you and your brother and your father do at Moselle?
everything: deer, duck, quail, dove, hogs.
You have a duck pond?
We have a duck pond.
Okay. And the hunting was, did you have a lot of friends come out and hunt as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now the jury has seen a aerial view of the property, and there's a main house, shed, kennels, and then there's a house sort of right on Moselle Road. What do you call that house?
That's the cabin.
The cabin. And did you live in the cabin with friends over summers at some point in time?
I did. The summer of my sophomore year, after my sophomore year, me and two of my buddies lived in the cabin.
Okay. And who are those buddies?
Nolan Tootin and Rogan Gibson.
Okay. And the so we've We can get more of this. We've heard about hogs and pigs on the property. Can you tell the jury a little bit about that?
About the hogs?
Yes, sir.
We had a lot of hogs, and if you don't know, hogs are very destructive to a piece of property. You know, we plant food plots for the deer, plant the fields for the doves and the ducks, and they basically go through and ruin it all. So, given the high population of hogs, we, would frequently go out and hunt them, try to cut the numbers down a little bit.
Did what kind of guns did you have there at Moselle?
We had a lot of guns.
Do you have shotguns?
We did shotguns.
You have 12 gauge shotguns?
12 gauge shotguns, 20 gauge shotguns, 16 gauge shotguns, 28 gauge shotguns.
Right. And how many type rifles did you have on the property?
A lot.
Can you just name some of them?
Yeah, 270 short mag, 7mm 08, 308, 243, 223, 300 blackout.
And what type of ammo did you keep on the property?
Well, I mean, all ammos for those calibers.
Sure. And where were the guns kept primarily?
In the gun room at the main house at Moselle.
And was there a pool table in the gun room?
There was.
Okay. Were there times when guns were left elsewhere on the property?
Yes.
Where else on the property would guns be left?
Well, just myself. I mean, I've left them up at the shed before. I've left them on golf cart used that day. Left them in a truck. I mean, guns would just not always find their way back to the gun room.
How about Paul? How was he with securing guns?
Not good.
What do you mean by that?
Paul left guns probably more on the property than anybody else, and sometimes sometimes he would use my gun and then he would leave it, and then I'd have to track it down.
Right. Did Paul carry guns in his truck?
He did.
Would he keep his truck locked up?
No, not all the time.
Did at some point in time you and Paul receive 300 blackouts for Christmas?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember roughly, was that 2016 or 2017?
Sounds right.
Okay. And what color was your 300 blackout?
It was black.
And have you been sitting in this courtroom during the entire trial?
Yes, sir.
And the jury's seen a black 300 blackout. Is that yours?
It is. That is my 300 blackout.
Was that the one you got for Christmas?
Yes, sir.
And what color was Paul's?
Paul's was black and tan.
And when you say black and tan, what part was tan and what part was black?
So the receiver would have been tan, and and barrel would have been tan.
What part would have been black?
Stock, maybe.
Okay. And so yours was all black, his was black and tan.
That's right.
What happened to his that he got for Christmas in 2016?
His gun was apparently stolen, lost, taken. Yeah.
How do you know that?
That's just what Paul told me.
What happened to your gun after Paul's was stolen?
My gun became, what we would both use.
And did that create some confrontation between you two at times?
Yes, sir.
And why?
Well, kind of like I just touched on. So he would use it. He's not very good about putting it back where he found it. I leave it somewhere. I go back and, want to get it, and it's not there.
Did you notice, were you aware that Paul got a replacement at some point in time?
No, sir.
Well, you heard about that in the courtroom?
Yes, sir.
Trial? Okay. But up to that point, did you ever see Paul use the replacement?
No, sir. I've never seen a replacement.
So every time in your presence Paul was using a 300 blackout, which one would it be?
Mine.
There's, I'm not going to pull these guns out, Buster, but there's been just discussion, and the jury has seen a 12 gauge Spinelli with a Mojo sticker on it. Whose gun is that?
That's mine.
And what's Mojo?
Mojo is a brand of decoy. It's basically what it is it's, say you buy a wood duck Mojo and it sits on a pole, but the wings are motorized, so it's to replicate, a more alive duck.
And did you, why's your Benelli have a Mojo sticker on it?
Because I bought a Mojo decoy, and in the box it came with a sticker, and I put the sticker on the gun barrel.
And so that way you know that's your gun.
That's right.
I believe the evidence in the case is that Mojo Benelli, when it was seized, was loaded. Did you frequently put the gun away loaded?
Yes, sir.
Why?
Knowing that I might need it again at any point.
Okay.
Just, put it back on the shelf. I kept the safety on.
Okay. And I think it was loaded with a 3-inch and a 3.5-inch turkey load. Do you remember that you would load?
Buster was composed. He spoke clearly. He described his father as a devoted parent, the man who had coached every little league team he played on, who was deeply involved in his sons' lives. He said that when he arrived at Moselle in the early hours of June 8th, his father was destroyed, heartbroken, broken down, crying. And there were moments during the more personal portions of his testimony where Buster's composure appeared to crack ever so slightly, particularly when he was asked about the phone call he received the night his mother and brother were shot. But there was something else happening in that courtroom that the cameras captured, something that generated significant discussion among observers, legal analysts, and the public in the days that followed. During some of the most graphic and disturbing testimony of the entire trial, testimony describing in clinical detail the physical injuries sustained by Paul Murdaugh, the cameras caught Buster Murdaugh in a moment that many people struggled to interpret.
15-00592, the State of South Carolina, County of Colleton, in the Court of General Sessions in the term of 2022, July, the State versus Richard Alexander Murdaugh, defendant, indictment for murder, SC Code 16-3-0010, CDR Code 0116. Do you want me to turn it over? Okay. Guilty verdict. Signed by the forelady, 3-2-23. Docket number 2022-GS-15-00593, the State of South Carolina, County of Colleton, in the Court of General Sessions, the July term of 2022. The State versus Richard Alexander Murdaugh, defendant, indictment for murder, SC Code 16-3-0010, CDR Code 0116, verdict guilty, signed by the forelady, date 3/2/23. Docket number 2022-GS15-00595, the State of South Carolina, County of Colleton, Court of General Sessions, July term 2022. The State versus Richard Alexander Murdaugh, defendant. Indictment for possession of a weapon during the commission of a violent crime. SC Code -16-23-0490. CDR Code 0549. Verdict guilty. Signed by the foreperson of the jury. Date 3/2/23. Docket number 2022-GS-15-00594. The State of South Carolina, County of Colleton, Court of General Sessions, July term 2022. The State versus Richard Alexander Murdaugh, defendant. Indictment for possession of a weapon during the commission of a violent crime. SC Code 16-23-0490. CDR Code 0549. Verdict guilty. Signed by the foreperson of the jury. 3/2/23.
Whether what the camera captured in that moment was a smirk, as many described it, or something else, perhaps a nervous reflex, a grimace misread by a camera angle, a coping mechanism activated in the face of unbearable imagery, is genuinely difficult to say. Human beings manage profound distress in profoundly unexpected ways. The body sometimes reacts with expressions that are misaligned with the internal experience. And yet, that moment circulated widely. It was dissected by people who felt it confirmed something they already suspected and defended by people who argued it was being wildly misinterpreted. What it demonstrates, perhaps more than anything else, is the impossible position Buster Murdaugh occupied in that courtroom. Under a microscope, every expression cataloged and interpreted by a watching world. The testimony then turned to firearms. Because one of the key questions in the entire case was about the weapons used in the murders, specifically a .300 blackout rifle and a shotgun, and who in the family had access to them, and who knew about them. The Murdaugh family owned multiple firearms, and the prosecution needed to establish not just what guns existed in that household, but who knew about them, and where they were typically kept. Buster Murdaugh was questioned directly on this point.
Shotguns.
You have 12 gauge shotgun?
12 gauge shotguns, 20 gauge shotguns, 16 gauge shotguns, 28 gauge shotguns.
Right. And how many type rifles did you have on the property?
A lot.
Can you just name some of them?
Yeah, 270 short mag, 7mm 08, 308, 243, 223, 300 blackout.
And what type of ammo did you keep on the property?
Well, I mean, all ammos for those calibers.
Sure. And where were the guns kept primarily?
In the gun room at the main house at Moselle.
And was there a pool table in the gun room?
There was.
Okay. Were there times when guns were left elsewhere on the property?
Yes.
Where else on the property would guns be left?
Well, just myself. I mean, I've left them up at the shed before. I've left them on golf cart used that day. Left them in a truck. I mean, guns would just not always find their way back to the gun room.
How about Paul? How was he with securing guns?
Not good.
What do you mean by that?
Paul left guns probably more on the property than anybody else, and sometimes sometimes he would use my gun and then he would leave it, and then I'd have to track it down.
Right. Did Paul carry guns in his truck?
He did.
Would he keep his truck locked up?
No, not all the time.
Did at some point in time you and Paul receive 300 blackouts for Christmas?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember roughly, was that 2016 or 2017?
Sounds right.
Okay. And what color was your 300 blackout?
It was black.
And have you been sitting in this courtroom during the entire trial?
Yes, sir.
And the jury's seen a black 300 blackout. Is that yours?
It is. That is my 300 blackout.
Was that the one you got for Christmas?
Yes, sir.
And what color was Paul's?
Paul's was black and tan.
And when you say black and tan, what part was tan and what part was black?
So the receiver would have been tan, and and barrel would have been tan.
What part would have been black?
Stock, maybe?
Okay. And so yours was all black, his was black and tan.
That's right.
What happened to his that he got for Christmas in 2016?
His gun was apparently stolen, lost, taken. Yeah.
How do you know that?
That's just what Paul told me.
What happened to your gun after Paul's was stolen?
My gun became, what we would both use.
And did that create some confrontation between you two at times?
Yes, sir.
And why?
Well, kind of like I just touched on. So he would use it. He's not very good about putting it back where he found it. I leave it somewhere. I go back and, want to get it, and it's not there.
Did you notice, were you aware that Paul got a replacement at some point in time?
No, sir.
Well, you heard about that in the courtroom?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But up to that point, Did you ever see Paul use the replacement?
No, sir. I've never seen a replacement.
So every time in your presence Paul was using a 300 blackout, which one would it be?
Mine.
There's, I'm not going to pull these guns out, Buster, but there's been discussion and the jury has seen a 12-gauge Benelli with a Mojo sticker on it. Whose gun is that?
That's mine.
And what's Mojo?
Mojo is a brand of decoy. It's basically what it is it's, you know, say you buy a wood duck Mojo and it sits on a pole, but the wings are motorized. So it's to replicate, you know, a more alive duck.
And did you, why's your Benelli have a Mojo sticker on it?
Because I bought a Mojo decoy and in the box it came with a sticker. And I put the sticker on the gun barrel.
And so that way you know that's your gun.
That's right.
I believe the evidence in the case is that Mojo Benelli, when it was seized, was loaded. Did you frequently put the gun away loaded?
Yes, sir.
Why?
You know, knowing that I might need it again at any point.
Okay.
Just, you know, put it back on the shelf. I kept the safety on.
Okay. And I think it was loaded with a 3-inch and a 3.5-inch turkey load. Do you remember that you would load that gun with a 3-inch and a 3.5-inch?
Yes, sir.
And why would you do that?
I do that because when I go turkey hunting, the goal is to, you know, get the turkey close to you and shoot it in the first try. But if I were to miss and the turkey goes running away and I try to shoot it again, I put a bigger shell, larger shell behind the smaller one for that.
That portion of the testimony was significant not because it definitively resolved the question of the weapons. It did not, but because it established the texture of daily life at Moselle. The firearms were not hidden. They were part of the fabric of the family. Hunting was a central activity. Weapons were known and discussed openly among family members. Buster's answers on this point were matter-of-fact, almost clinical, in a way that perhaps reflected his upbringing more than anything else. These are not unusual objects to him. They were simply part of the household. In the context of a murder trial in which those same household firearms, or firearms identical to them, were the instruments of two people's deaths, the matter-of-factness of those answers lands differently than it might have in any other circumstance. Among the many dimensions of the Alex Murdaugh case, one of the most humanly complex is the question of his opioid addiction, because this was not a secret that Alex kept from everyone. Various people in his orbit had some degree of awareness or suspicion about his dependency on prescription painkillers. The question during the trial was, how much did Buster know? And when did he know it? Under cross-examination, Buster Murdaugh was asked directly about his awareness of his father's drug dependency. His answer revealed something important about the nature of family denial and the limits of what children, even adult children, allow themselves to fully see.
Buster, were you aware that your dad had a opioid addiction?
A little bit. I knew a little bit about the usage of pills.
What did you know about it?
I knew that either my brother and mom had found them at some point and then, you know, told them like, hey, we found these. And I want to say the 2018 around Christmas, he went to a detox facility after Christmas. And that was my knowledge of it. Thought that handled it. And then there were a couple more times after the fact where they would kind of go into this finding pills, all that stuff. And then he did a few kind of like at home, just self-detoxed a couple times. And, you know, thought, you know, once he did that, you know, get off of them. But that was kind of my general knowledge about it all.
You thought he had beat it?
That's right. Yes, sir.
And when he was confronted about his pills, what was his attitude?
I don't know for sure, because I wasn't there when a lot of the confrontations happened with them finding the pills. But I mean, I've never heard anything, just, apologetic and,
Right.
sorry, and would usually be his kind of regular, kind of response.
Buster's answer was that he knew a little bit. He acknowledged that he was aware there had been a problem. He said he believed his father had dealt with it, that Alec had checked into a rehabilitation facility in late 2018, and that while there had been a couple more instances after that, Buster thought his father had handled it. He thought he had beaten it. The word choice is telling. Thought. Past tense. Because the reality, as emerged fully in the trial, was that Alex Murdaugh's opioid dependency had never been resolved. It had simply been concealed more effectively over time. He was, by multiple accounts, consuming enormous quantities of opioid medication on a regular basis. Quantities that would have been visible to anyone paying close enough attention. And yet the people around him, including Buster, continued to operate under the assumption that things had been addressed. There is a name for this in family psychology. It is sometimes called the family system's investment in the status quo. The way people who love someone with a serious dependency will find ways, consciously or not, to believe the story that things are fine because the alternative is too destabilizing to accept. And in the Murdaugh family, where the stakes of Alec's stability were enormous, the law firm, the finances, the family reputation, the legal dynasty, the investment in the status quo was enormous. Buster's answer on the stand was not evasive. It was the answer of someone who had perhaps genuinely not allowed himself to fully see what was directly in front of him. And that, in its own way, is one of the most heartbreaking dimensions of this entire story. After his conviction on March 2nd, 2023, a verdict that came back in less than 3 hours, Alex Murdaugh was sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms in prison. He was also serving concurrent state and federal sentences related to the financial crimes, totaling 27 and 40 years respectively. He had pleaded guilty to dozens of counts of fraud, theft, and related charges. And yet, in the first recorded phone call to emerge after his conviction, Alex Murdaugh's voice carried something that many people found remarkable. It was not the voice of a man who was done trying to shape things. The very first phone call released publicly after Alex Murdaugh's conviction was one between father and son. And what Alex chose to say in that first post-conviction conversation is something that has been analyzed and debated ever since.
I need people to talk, but I'm way past worrying about what people that don't matter say. There's so many people that they don't have a friggin' clue.
Well, it's easier for you. You don't run into these people in public.
Which people?
Any people that has a negative outlook on this thing.
Well, do you know who they are?
I mean, nah, man, but I get stopped and yelled at all the time. I got cussed out in the gas station the other day.
You kidding?
Nah.
So what?
Being who I am, I guess.
Who was it?
And so I don't know who he is. Some redneck fellow.
And what did he say?
He just started making a ruckus in the gas station, yelling at me, talking about WTOC's looking for me, and called me a piece of shit and just stuff like that. Just crazy stuff.
I'm sorry as I can be.
Okay. I don't really talk to him. I just kind of escape the situation.
WTOC. I mean, what the does he know about WTOC?
Man, apparently he said he saw something on the news where they said that people are looking for me, or someone's. I don't know what he said. I mean, it's not like I sat there and asked any questions. I mean, I understand that you've done illegal, but that doesn't mean you can just, turn a cold shoulder to the laws of the United States.
I've allegedly done illegal stuff. I'm kidding. Anyway, so, but it is what it is, you know? It is what it is.
The calls continued. Father and son, maintaining contact through monitored prison phone lines, navigating a relationship that had been permanently altered by the events that had unfolded. And through those calls, a dynamic persisted that had been visible in the courtroom. Alec talking, directing, shaping the conversation. Buster listening, responding, occasionally pushing back quietly, but largely staying within the lanes his father set. At one point during these calls, the subject of something remarkably ordinary arose. Travel, specifically airline travel, and the somewhat surprising topic of gambling. An exchange so normal sounding that it creates its own kind of dissonance.
You know, I just thought it was a real cheap airline, but I mean, it was nicer than I thought it was going to be.
Did y'all have room in your seats?
You know, the seats were all right. But you know, it was, you know, it's just a different, like the seats don't recline because they can fit more. If they don't recline, it's just, you know, it's just different.
So you went 4 hours with no recliner?
Yeah. But, you know, everything was still fun, and then going to Sedona was a good time.
Did you get to gamble any?
Yeah, so I did go gambling, and then the next day there was an article created about how I'm misusing funds.
By gambling?
Yeah, someone took a picture of me and John Marvin in the casino.
You're kidding me. What a fucking... Are you kidding me?
No.
How'd they recognize
No.
you?
Man, I guess, I mean, I'm a national figure, I think.
I guess you're going to have to wear a hat and shit when you go places.
That exchange is one of those moments that seems to belong in a different story entirely. Two people, one of them a convicted double murderer serving life in prison, discussing airfare and gambling with the casual ease of people planning a weekend trip. And yet, that is the thing about these recordings. They do not sound like what you would expect. They sound, at intervals, like ordinary life. And that ordinariness is perhaps the most psychologically unsettling quality they possess. Because it raises the question that follows this entire story wherever it goes. What does it tell us about how these two people experienced and processed everything that happened? There's a version of Buster Murdaugh that the public came to know during the trial. The composed, red-haired young man in the gallery, present every single day, visible to cameras, saying very little. When he did speak at the stand, he was measured, precise, careful without appearing to perform carefulness. His girlfriend, Brooklyn White, a law student at the time, now his wife, was beside him throughout. And the image they projected together was one of deliberate, controlled normalcy in the midst of utter abnormality. But the jail calls give us a different register, a more private one. And when you hold the two versions of Buster Murdaugh side by side, the public face in the courtroom and the private voice on the phone, certain questions arise that are genuinely difficult to dismiss. To eye in the courtroom, Buster testified that his father was destroyed by the deaths of Maggie and Paul. He painted a picture of grief. And yet, in the jail calls, what you hear in Alex Murdaugh's voice is not predominantly grief. What you hear is management. The management of information. The management of narrative. The management of logistics. And Buster, in those calls, is not engaging with a grieving father. He is engaging with an active, directive, strategically thinking one. At sentencing, something remarkable happened. After 2 life sentences were handed down, Alex Murdaugh was given the opportunity to speak. And in that moment, he chose to address his son directly, in open court, in front of the cameras, in front of the world.
Buster, I am so sorry that I let you down. I am so sorry that I have not been able to be with you. During such hard times. I am so sorry
that I did so many things that are so contradictory to every single thing Mom and I ever taught you and Paul. I am so sorry. I am so very sorry that the things that I did and that I am pleading guilty to here today have somehow caused some people, especially people on social media and some people in the media, to somehow believe that based on the things that I did, that it is somehow okay to make false, baseless, unsubstantiated claims against you that are not only based on no facts and no evidence whatsoever, but are also not based on any semblance of reality whatsoever. And I am so sorry that you have had to go through that. I know, Buster, that you know that I have always been proud of you. I have never been more proud of you than I am for the way that you have handled all of the adversity that I put on you. Your whole family is proud of you. Mom is proud of you, and Papa is proud of you. I see in letters, emails, and messages that people give to my attorneys.
That moment, a father speaking directly to his son in the moments after being condemned to spend the rest of his life in prison, was one of the most watched clips to emerge from the entire trial. And the question it raises is one that you will have to answer for yourself. Was that the voice of a man speaking from a place of genuine love and regret? Or was it one final act of narrative management? A man who had spent his entire life understanding the power of words and image, choosing his last public words carefully? The truth may be both. The truth, in most complicated human stories, is always both. Here is the question that this entire story, in every dimension, keeps returning to. And it is not a question about guilt or innocence. It is not a legal question. It is a human one. What do you do when the person you love most in the world, the person who raised you, who coached your little league teams, who called you with a voice that sounded odd on the worst night of your life, is the person in the state of South Carolina convicted of taking your mother and her brother from you? What do you do when, from behind bars, that person continues to direct your behavior, ask for information, make requests that feel impossible, and yet your loyalty, whatever its source, whether love or habit or something else entirely, does not allow you to simply walk away? Buster Murdaugh has maintained, consistently and publicly, that he believes his father is innocent. He said on the stand. He said it in a documentary interview. He has built his public position around that belief. And he has continued, through all of it, to maintain his relationship with his father. But in June 2024, Buster Murdaugh did something that opened up an entirely new chapter in his own story. He filed a defamation lawsuit against Netflix, against Warner Brothers Discovery, against multiple production companies that had created documentaries about the Murdaugh family. His claim was specific, that those documentaries falsely implied he was involved in the 2015 death of his former high school classmate, Stephen Smith, whose body had been found on a rural road in Hampton County, and whose case had been officially declared a homicide by investigators in 2023. The Stephen Smith case had re-entered public attention when SLED, the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, announced in June 2021, shortly after the Murdaugh murders, that it was reopening the investigation based on information gathered during the double homicide probe. Smith was found in the road in July 2015. He was 19 years old. His death was initially classified as a hit and run, but his family never accepted that ruling. And as the Murdaugh name became the center of a national investigation, speculation about Smith's death and about Buster Murdaugh's possible connection to it spread widely. Buster Murdaugh has denied any involvement in Stephen Smith's death. He has never been charged. He has never been named a formal suspect. And in a remarkable development, Smith's own mother, Sandy Smith, has said publicly that she does not believe Buster was involved, a statement that Buster's legal team has pointed to prominently in their filings. By February 2025, a federal judge had allowed significant portions of the defamation lawsuit to proceed. The case was moving toward discovery, a phase that legal experts warned had the potential to surface new information not just about the documentary's editorial choices, but about the investigation into Smith's death itself. Some legal analysts publicly predicted that the lawsuit would open Buster up to scrutiny he had not anticipated. Others argued that it was a necessary fight for a man whose name had been attached to something he categorically denied. And then, in February 2026, just days ago as this video is being released, Buster Murdaugh reached a settlement in his lawsuit against Warner Brothers Discovery and its affiliated production companies. The terms of that settlement were not disclosed. The case against those defendants was dismissed with prejudice, meaning it cannot be refiled. The lawsuit against Netflix and remaining defendants, as of this recording, continues to move through the courts. Meanwhile, something even larger was happening. On February 11th, 2026, 10 days before the date of this video, Alex Murdaugh's appeal of his double murder conviction was heard before the full South Carolina Supreme Court. His defense attorneys argued two main points. First, that the former Colleton County Clerk of Court, Becky Hill, had poisoned the jury by making improper comments to jurors during the trial. Comments she later lied about under oath, and for which she ultimately pleaded guilty in December 2025 to perjury, obstruction of justice, and misconduct in office. Second, that evidence of Alex's extensive financial crimes should never have been admitted at the murder trial, because the defense argued the alleged motive, that he killed Maggie and Paul to prevent his financial schemes from being exposed, was illogical and prejudicial. The South Carolina Supreme Court justices asked pointed and skeptical questions of the prosecution during the February 11th oral arguments. The Chief Justice referred to the clerk's conduct as that of a rogue official. A justice expressed that he was struggling with the logical connection between the financial crimes and the murders. No ruling has yet been issued, but the hearing was widely noted as one in which the justices appeared to take the defense's argument seriously. If the conviction is overturned, Alex Murdaugh would not be acquitted. He would remain in prison for the financial crimes, decades in state and federal sentences. But a new trial on the murder charges would begin, and the entire legal story of the Murdaugh murders would enter yet another chapter. And Buster Murdaugh, the son who has maintained his father's innocence since the very beginning, would be watching. We have spent a great deal of time with these recordings. These jail calls and courtroom moments and post-conviction conversations between a father and a son. And I want to spend the last part of this video asking you, not telling you, what you think they reveal. Because here's the truth about this case. Here is the thing that sets it apart from every other story we have covered on this channel. This is not a story where the mystery is about who did something. The courts have ruled on that, and an appeal is pending. This is a story about what it means to love someone whose actions, alleged, convicted, appealed, have altered your entire world beyond recognition. Buster Murdaugh lost his mother and his brother in a single night. He lost the version of his father he thought he knew, the one who coached his little league teams and came to his games and raised him in the low country of South Carolina as part of a legacy. He lost his trajectory as a lawyer. He lost his privacy. He lost, in many respects, the ability to grieve in an ordinary way, because his grief became public property the moment the case became national news. And through all of it, he stayed. He showed up to the courtroom every day. He took the stand for his father. He answered questions under oath about guns and knights at the property and what his father said when he called. He continued the phone calls. He made plans, or didn't make plans, that his father directed from behind bars. He received requests that most people in his position might have found unthinkable. And his response, again and again, was a kind of steady, guarded, complicated presence. Not cold, exactly, but not open, not dissolved by grief, not broken in the ways the public perhaps expected or wanted to see. Across all of the courtroom footage, across all of the jail calls, across all of the recorded moments that now form the archive of this family's tragedy, there is one thread that connects them all. And it lives in this question, which was posed to Buster Murdaugh directly in testimony, and which his answer, in its quietness, may tell us more than any other moment in this entire story.
Buster, I am so sorry that I let you down. I am so sorry that I have not been able to be with you. During such hard times. I am so sorry that I did so many things that are so contradictory to every single thing Mom and I ever taught you and Paul. I am so sorry. I am so very sorry that the things that I did and that I am pleading guilty to here today have somehow caused some people, especially people on social media, and some people in the media, to somehow believe that based on the things that I did, that it is somehow okay to make false, baseless, unsubstantiated claims against you that are not only based on no facts and no evidence whatsoever, but are also not based on any semblance of reality whatsoever. And I am so sorry that you have had to go through that. I know, Buster, that you know that I have always been proud of you. I have never been more proud of you than I am for the way that you have handled all of the adversity that I put on you. Your whole family is proud of you. Mom is proud of you, and Papa is proud of you. I see in letters, emails, and messages that people give to my attorneys
I want to ask you something before we close. Not about the legal case. Not about guilt or innocence. I want to ask you about yourself. If you knew, or believed you knew, that someone you loved deeply was innocent of something the whole world had decided they were guilty of, how long could you hold on to that? How many phone calls could you take? How many requests could you honor? How many times could you sit in a courtroom and keep your face still while the details of the worst event of your life were described in forensic language by strangers? How long, in other words, is loyalty a choice before it becomes the only thing left? Because that might be the most honest question this story asks. Not about Alex Murdaugh and what he did or did not do on the night of June 7th, 2021. But about what it costs to be the person who stands beside someone when the world is turned against them. What it costs to be Buster. As of February 2026, here is where every thread of this story currently sits. Alex Murdaugh is serving 2 life sentences, plus concurrent state and federal sentences for financial crimes at a South Carolina correctional facility. His appeal of the murder convictions was argued before the South Carolina Supreme Court on February 11th. 2026. A ruling has not yet been issued. If the court orders a new trial, it will represent one of the most significant legal reversals in the state's history. If the court upholds the conviction, Alex Murdaugh's attorneys have indicated they plan to pursue federal appeals. The former clerk of court, Becky Hill, whose improper conduct during the trial became the central issue in the appeal, pleaded guilty in December 2025 to perjury, obstruction of justice, and misconduct in office, and was sentenced to 3 years of probation. Buster Murdaugh lives in Bluffton, South Carolina, with his wife, attorney Brooklyn White, whom he married in a private ceremony in Beaufort in May 2025. He has maintained a low public profile since the trial, appearing publicly only when the legal demands of his defamation lawsuit have required it. He settled a portion of that lawsuit in February 2026. The remaining defendants continue to litigate. Stephen Smith's case remains officially unsolved. No one has been charged. No arrest has been made. SLED continues to classify his 2023 death determination as an intentional killing. His mother, Sandy Smith, continues to advocate for answers and accountability. The Murdaugh saga, begun in a single phone call on a June night in 2021, expanded across courtrooms and documentaries and social media, and now the South Carolina Supreme Court, is not over. This case is still developing, still moving, still generating the kind of legal, emotional, and moral complexity that refuses to be neatly filed away. And Buster Murdaugh is still in it. He was born into it. He is, in some ways, the living continuation of it. The only surviving member of the immediate family who is not behind bars, carrying a name that now carries an entirely different kind of weight than the one it carried when he was growing up, building a life quietly, deliberately, with his wife in a town that is not Hampton, that is not Walterboro, that is not the place where any of this happened. Whether that life can ever fully separate itself from what the name Murdaugh has come to mean, whether any name can survive what this one has been through and come out the other side recognizable. That may be the final question this story leaves us with, and it may be one that only time can answer. There are cases that stay with you not because they give you easy answers, but because they refuse to give you any answer at all that doesn't immediately open into another question. The Murdaugh case is one of those. And within it, Buster Murdaugh, the son who stayed, the son who testified, the son who picked up the phone, is one of the most quietly haunting figures I've come across in covering true crime. That he is not the villain of this story. He is not the hero. He is something much harder to categorize. A person caught at the intersection of love and tragedy and public scrutiny, trying to find solid ground where there may not be any. And perhaps that is the uncomfortable mirror this story holds up to all of us. Because most of us, at some point in our lives, have had to decide how much of ourselves we give to someone we love when the cost of that love is higher than we ever expected it to be. Most of us have had to decide whether loyalty is something we offer freely or something we owe. And most of us have had to sit with the fact that the person we thought we knew most completely can, in a moment, reveal a dimension we had no idea existed. Buster Murdaugh is living that reality. In public, without the ability to close the curtains and process it in private. And whatever else this story is, it is also, at its core, a deeply human one. Thank you for watching this video. Thank you for staying with this story all the way to the end. If anything in this video made you think, made you feel, made you see this case differently than you did before you click play, that is exactly what this channel exists to do. We walk the dark trails. We follow the threads. We ask the questions that don't have comfortable answers. That is Dark Trail Files. That will always be Dark Trail Files. If you're not yet subscribed, please do that now. Leave a comment below. Tell me, after everything you just watched, do you believe Buster Murdaugh's loyalty to his father is genuine? Or do you believe there is something else at work? I want to read every single response. And I will be back with the next trail very soon. This has been Dark Trail Files. Stay curious, stay questioning, and never stop following the trail.